notwithstanding the absence of a TRA or an equivalent in Canada, there is a need for an engagement with Taiwan that transcends the legalization or the existence of a specific document to this end. In the second decade of the 21st century, meanwhile, as China rose to assume a preeminent role in international affairs and began to impose its will on others, with its money, influence, military, and what is now known as sharp power, the need to deepen our engagement with democratic Taiwan becomes all the more pressing and, I would add, logical. As we collectively seek to find ways to cope with a powerful economy run by a ruthless authoritarian regime, and as we endeavor to balance our economic requirements with the need to defend the integrity of our democratic institutions and the values that underpin them, there is no more ideal a partner than Taiwan, a democracy of 23.5 million souls, which for decades has had to conjugate and balance these very requirements with its large authoritarian neighbor. Only in this case, the threat for Taiwan, unlike the threat for Canada, for example, is existential and an immediate one, as the PRC has long endeavored to annex Taiwan and incorporate it under the one country, two systems framework, which anyone who has followed developments in Hong Kong in recent years would know that is an absolutely non-viable proposition for the Taiwanese people. And we've seen the impact that this has had on the residents of Hong Kong's freedom, liberties, and democratic aspirations. In the past 5 years or so, the US government has begun to reassess its entire China strategy, which hitherto had operated under the assumption that patience and generosity, added to a strong dose of wishful thinking, would eventually help transform authoritarian China into something closer to a recognizable liberal democracy. Instead, short-sightedness and self-interest yielded a resilient authoritarianism under Hu Jintao, followed by dictatorship under Xi Jinping that now threatens the international system that has existed since the conclusion of World War II. This reassessment, which it's important to mention predates and will survive Donald Trump, has in turn emboldened US officials to push the envelope on what is permissible under the ambit of the TRA and the US's One China policy. We must remember that in most cases, the limits to our engagement with Taiwan are self-imposed, a result of us allowing Beijing to define the nature of our laws. In the past 2 or 3 years, Washington has launched a series of bilateral activities with Taiwan, many of them under the Global Cooperation Training Framework, or GCTF, and then soon under the US Department of State's Global Engagement Center, or GEC, addressing a variety of topics from disease prevention to media literacy, a polite term for fake news, law enforcement, and religious freedom, which was held just last month. Finding in Taiwan a willing partner, the US has also sought a greater role for the island nation in defending freedom, encouraging good governance, and improving development aid in the Pacific Islands, 6 of which are official diplomatic allies of Taiwan and the target of strong pressure from the PRC. Meanwhile, the US defense relationship with Taiwan has remained robust, with continued arms sales, joint training, US Navy transits in the Taiwan Strait, and various ongoing programs. There is no doubt in my mind that the US military understands the value of keeping Taiwan as an ally in the region, and that its loss would prove destabilizing for the entire Indo-Pacific. This deepening of ties between Taiwan and the US since 2016, and I think it's fair to say that those are at an all-time high, has also been deeply troubling to the Chinese leadership. And every time they meet with officials and academics, this is the very first question that comes out of their mouths is, what's going on between the United States and Taiwan? Why are they getting so close? Beijing is quite worried at what we've seen recently. Besides the changing international context and shifting perceptions of China, responsible, pragmatic, and predictable leadership in Taipei and a commitment to diversifying Taiwan's engagement with partners around the world has been one of the key accomplishments of the Tsai Ing-wen administration. Unlike her predecessor's often exclusive focus on China, or his predecessor's often reckless attitude, which alienated and scared many potential international partners, President Tsai Ing-wen has wisely ascertained global attitudes and actively sought engagement where engagement was possible, while at the same time respecting the limits of their foreign counterparts. In many cases, this has meant quiet, semi-official work behind closed doors, prioritizing constructiveness over publicity. In my nearly 14 years in Taiwan, I don't think there's ever been a period when Taiwan received so many delegations of members of Congress, members of parliament, government officials, academics, and journalists. And all of this has occurred for a reason. Still, there have been failures as well, such as efforts by the US and a coalition of democracies, including Canada, to ensure that Taiwan has meaningful participation at multilateral agencies such as the World Health Organization, Interpol, and the Montreal-based International Civil Aviation Organization. And it's also the result of the appeal of Taiwan's modern economy and what it has to offer to the Canadian economy. There are still some obstacles, and legal reform often is frustratingly slow in Taiwan, but progress has been made, and I am sure that we will see more over the coming years. Exchanges between our two societies are also vibrant. Every year, thousands of Taiwanese come to Canada to study. And according to Canadian government figures, there are nearly 200,000 people of Taiwanese descent in Canada and nearly 60,000 Canadian nationals living in Taiwan. Canada has a very positive image among the Taiwanese. It's seen as a country with a strong commitment to democracy and rule of law. And like Taiwan, it is a middle power that needs to make space for itself despite its proximity to a powerful neighbor. Now that Canada is at long last awakening to the potential pitfalls of forming a close relationship with a revisionist and undemocratic China, as the Huawei controversy and Beijing's retaliation have made perfectly clear, Canadians of all stripe in government, in academia, in the media, and in civil society have a renewed interest in reaching out to their Taiwanese counterparts. This isn't only because Taiwan's long experience of dealing with China, though no doubt this generates much of its appeal. Taiwan doesn't have all the solutions, and it too is struggling to identify, to track, and to find appropriate ways to counter Chinese growing influence, interference, and sharp power. More than ever, this challenge that threatens all our democracies calls for cooperation among like-minded countries so that we together can come up with a countervailing strategy. For this, we need countries like Taiwan.